Yo, what's up? Welcome back to Reviews with Jake, where I just got done watching The Guilty. The Guilty is a new film on Netflix featuring Jake Gyllenhaal as a demoted cop who is put on emergency phone line duty leading up to a disciplinary court hearing. At the end of his shift, he receives a phone call from a distressed woman who seems to have been kidnapped, and he puts all of his wit and resources into saving her. What, were you expecting Dune this week? Sorry, but the cosmos just did not align for that. Remember a few weeks back when I mentioned the possibility of a few big titles not being able to review just on the proximity of when they were released? Well, Dune was one of them. I knew that this would be a tough week for me to get to the movie theater, considered checking it out the week after, but I knew that the week after was gonna have like Antlers and Last Night in Soho, movies that, honestly, kinda interested me more. I've never read the book, I've never seen any of the movie adaptations, I have no stock in this story. I mean, I'll admit, it has a stacked ass cast, that interests me. It looks like a spectacle, that interests me, but all things considered, I think I could sleep at night not reviewing it. Maybe, we'll see. I definitely want to see it. Whether or not I review it, I don't know. If it blows me away enough, maybe I'll try and thread the needle, but we'll see. But for now, I have a canned review ready for you in my preoccupation. Instead of Dune, you get to hear a Jake talking about another Jake. Oh, what fun. I was particularly excited about this one because it qualified to be the next installment of my run of COVID-produced films created last year, which has been a really fun case study for me. And it's a prime concept for it. Like, I believe it was during my How It Ends review where I mentioned perfect concepts and stories that are just perfect for the COVID-produced treatment, like low crew, small cast size, all that stuff. I listed off a few examples. Can't remember if I mentioned the movie 7500 from last year or not when I made that list. It was a film that I reviewed last year that I really dug. I'm pretty sure it landed on my honorable mentions for the year. I could double check, but who has time? Bottom line is I dug that movie. I love the creative use of perspective, strategic vantage points to tell you a story that you've already heard before. How many kidnapping movies have you seen? Probably way too many. But how many have you seen from the perspective of the guy receiving the 911 call? Well, I guess probably two, because I guess this is a remake, which I've never seen the original for. Kinda like Dune. Would you look at that? Well, the pros mostly circulate around Jake Gyllenhaal's performance, which is 100% the marquee item here. Jake Gyllenhaal is easily one of my favorite actors of this generation. He's turned in so many great performances over the years of a wide variety of differing roles. He's just one of those guys that has the chops and charm to pull off damn near anything he is handed. And here he is absolutely put to the test because being a film that takes place within a single room for most of the film, there's not a lot of other places to point the camera besides his face. The spotlight is inescapable here, and it takes a truly talented, high-caliber actor to shine under these conditions. Joseph Gordon-Levitt pulled it off in 7500 just fine, but I think Gyllenhaal's performance here may have topped it. He portrays a very conflicted, unstable, loose-cannon character going through some very challenging mental, social, emotional hurdles. As a result, he's forced to portray a wide variety of emotions, sadness, anger, frustration, all of it. He knocks it all out to a T, sometimes within the same take. Jake Gyllenhaal has done a lot of amazing things over the years, but honestly, this may be one of the top ranking stuff, which is something I honestly was not expecting when I pushed play on this. What I was expecting was some great sound design and audible storytelling, because this is a concept that is almost a necessity to have it. Kind of like Pontypool or 7500, where you're not necessarily seeing all of the action that's happening, you're just hearing it. So you need to be able to design the audio in a way that kind of picks up the slack for those other senses. And this movie definitely pulls fruit from that same tree. It's not an easy thing to do. You need to be very tactful in creating these sound environments. You need to have very talented voice actors, the immediate sound effects, the environmental atmospheric sound effects, the noises of the phone if it's being finagled as they're talking, if it hits off of something. You need to include all of these noises in your sound design. It all adds a sort of realism to the movie experience because you're seeing it through the eyes of a commoner, a real person that might really experience these same situations. I also really dug the way that this movie was lit. It definitely helps that it largely takes place within a room with a lot of computer monitors and TV screens. As a result, they got to play around with a lot of stylish blues reflecting on Jake Gyllenhaal's face, mixing in maybe some reds, particularly coming from a light on his headset. It's a very fun yet logical setting to play around with these different color temperatures in a way that actually feels sensible. And play with it they do, like later on towards the end of the film when things start to ramp up, the intensity starts to build, Jake Gyllenhaal is on the phone for a high stakes situation. They let a lot more red light bleed onto his face than before. Most of the film is a lot of blues, but here when things start to really ramp up, they let the reds go in there. That kind of really pushes forward that feeling of panic, of dread. It was a really nice touch, and it was a perfectly explainable reason to play around with these fun colors. However, that being said, I wasn't the biggest fan of the way that this film was edited, and that leads me to the cons. Sometimes I felt like they just didn't know what to show visually. Like they put so much thought into the audible experience and they just didn't know what to do with the video. Sometimes they would fill it up with a wide variety of close-up shots back to back to back instead of mixing in some mids or wide shots to give us some sort of context and proximity. They play hopscotch with a 180-degree rule, which is a little disorienting. I just feel like they didn't have any rhyme or reason for the shots they were showing. They were just kind of throwing everything at the wall and seeing what stuck. They would even throw in a few shots here and there of sort of glimpses of the action, like in the midst of traffic, you'd see like the back of a car or tail lights or something like that to even mix in to kind of visually show what is happening instead of just making an audible experience. But I just didn't think that these shots were necessary. In fact, I thought they were a little distracting because they did not fit with the rest of the film stylistically. It almost felt like they didn't trust in their own ability to create these audible environments. They felt like they had to show us little visual glimpses of it too. But it honestly felt like it hurt it a lot more than it helped it. It was completely unnecessary. Like, I understand the need to feel like you need to keep things fresh by getting crafty with the visuals, but sometimes it's just overthinking it. I felt like Jake Gyllenhaal's performance was strong enough that they just really could have simplified it. Like, just put the camera down and let it sit there and let him do his thing. Don't cut away to something else. It also kind of felt like the plot of this movie had way too many branches, too many things going on at different places. Different people out there in the world that Jake Gyllenhaal spends the entire movie calling upon that have different attitudes, motivations, goals, missions. Sometimes these phone calls just kind of felt like the film's way of buying time. Like it felt like it was stretched too thin to last the sort of industry minimum hour-and-a-half runtime. There's literally a part where he calls a woman, one of the people from like a dispatch area or whatever, and asks for an update, and she says, "Nah, we're still working on it. Why? Do you have new information for us?" No. Then why are you calling us? Because the director needs me to buy another 5 minutes? Ugh. All in all, Jake Gyllenhaal's performance in this movie is fantastic. Outside of that, this film is just fine. Good enough to say that Covert produced films from this last year at 500. They're 2 and 2. Now, we just wait for the tiebreaker. I'm going to give The Guilty a B-. But that is just me. What do you guys think? Let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments below. And make sure to subscribe to this channel to stay up to date. New videos coming real soon. Stay safe. Thanks for checking in.